Okay, so it is time for the explications of Sonnets 21 through 30. I am going to try to avoid tangents as much as I possibly can and get through this as fast as possible. So let's see how that goes for me. Sonnet 21. The windmill turned its last and all was mute. The hush so recent birds still kept away. So the village has been abandoned for some reason. All trees beside the road were stripped of fruit, and footsteps proved no soul saw fit to stay. So basically, they have taken all the fruit from the trees with them because they're like, okay, we need all we can carry that is food on the road, and all of the footsteps are leading out of the village, and none into it. So everyone has left. The temple fell some time before the rest. Foundations marked the place where priests once stood, so they have disassembled the temple, which I called a church previously. Same thing. Doesn't matter what word I use. They've disassembled it and used it. I should read a little bit ahead before I explain that bit. Old houses bore new bricks with holy crests. Abandoned temple walls were used for good. So basically, because the king took their priest away in the previous cycle, they just dismantled the temple, broke it down, and used it to fix houses, essentially. Any damage that was there, just use temple bricks. Because you're not really using the temple for anything now, are you? Red tulips splashed those ghostly homes with blood, the gifts of yellow roses crushed beneath. So this is very much symbolic. Because what this is referring to, which you'll see in a few sonnets' time, is red tulips in this this poem tend to refer to romantic love. Yellow roses tend to refer to platonic love. That's what I've chosen to do with those two flowers as symbols. They represent a bit more than that, but that's all you really need to understand. So basically, the prince withdrew because being gay is illegal, and he wanted to confess his love for his friend, but obviously he couldn't do that. And so the gifts of yellow roses crushed beneath, he let his friendship disappear just because he couldn't have his romantic love. I mean, obviously, this is sort of like the fact that he can't be openly himself is sort of an oppression that he is experiencing himself, but still, he has allowed that oppression to basically affect other people by being like, I'm too scared, so I'm going to stay away now. That's sort of what I'm saying here. Pragmatic hands would leave just sticks and mud. An empty home now nature's to bequeath. So what I'm saying here, pragmatic hands would leave just sticks and mud, is they're going to realize that the village is empty now, and so they're going to just dismantle it and walk away. And then an empty home now nature's to bequeath, forsaken in the shade of castle walls. A people fled in search of warmer halls. So they're literally in view of the castle, which I've said previously, but they have been completely forsaken by the state, by like the nation that they live in. So yeah, that's that one. 22. It is a wonder that they held so long. The priest beheld his legacy of dust. Perhaps my choice to serve my king was wrong. So this is the priest reflecting on why he left the town and how that has affected it's not a town, it's a village, smaller than a town. Why he left the village and how that is affecting the people there. So come winter, I was all that they could trust. The cleric's wealth is never theirs alone. So in here, he's saying, so winter is the off season. It's when there's not as much harvest, and that's when it is the state's responsibility to redistribute wealth and redistribute resources. But of course, they didn't have really a lord who was redistributing. It was very much the priest's job. But because he left, well, he wasn't redistributing wealth anymore. I drank and dined for free among the folk, accept tribute from my crooked throne. I made the wealth of church and state a yoke that forced my whims and ways upon them all. He's reflecting on sort of what he did wrong when he was a priest, And then what he did wrong in leaving, when we say, and then when the king came looking for a priest, I did not even turn to see the fall. So I didn't even think about the fact that they would suffer when I left, and by absent hand society deceased. So he's basically blaming himself for having walked away. He's saying, this is my fault, the village being destroyed, that's on me, because I left and they didn't have anyone to redistribute wealth anymore. Makera, why entrust your grace to me, a man who spurned the rest for apogee? So Makera is the goddess he worships. He's specifically a priest of Makera. This is a polytheistic society, but they only have one temple, which is a temple to Makera, would have shrines to the other gods in there. But Makera was the main deity that this village worshipped, who in this context is the goddess of the earth and civilization, which very much makes sense for a farming society, I felt. Then a man who spurned the rest for apogee, the highest point. He's working for a king now, so that is very much the highest point of his career. That's why I chose the word apogee. I mean, it also rhymes with me, which is, helpful. 23. Young Suhit watched the village still below. No light shone out at either dawn or dusk. I do not understand, where did they go? Now remember, Suhit is like, 6 or 7 at this point, maybe? At most 8? So long days gone by made clear it was a husk. What have you done to chase our friends away? The princess pounded on her brother's door. So she's blaming her brother because who else does she have to blame? She doesn't understand what's going on. There's no one else around who lets me play. I do not understand what my life's for. Yeah, so the only time she's allowed to actually have fun is when she was going out to that village when her brother was bringing her along. So she doesn't understand what she's meant to do other than that. I do not understand who cares for me. I do not understand how friends are torn away, and I am told that I must be resigned to heartless bureaucrats' remand. So I initially wrote, I do not understand why I was born, but then I was like, actually, what if I took away the rhyme with torn? What if I literally tore that away? Because Suhit is having something torn away from her, so what if I tore that away from the rhyme scheme? Which is why I have the rhyme scheme here as A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, G, G, G. So resigned to heartless bureaucrats' remand, there is so much I do not understand, there is too much I do not understand. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. She doesn't get anything, she doesn't understand why any of this is happening, and no one will explain it to her, and so she's in a great deal of distress, as someone in single-digit age would be at a situation like this. Okay, we're actually getting through at a decent speed. This is good. 24. By yellow rose I had the best of friends. Their days and mine were joyful intertwined. By tulip bred an agony of ends. So this is the prince now, basically having a little soliloquy. This entire sonnet is just a single soliloquy. There is not a single line of narration here. This is all dialogue. By tulip bred an agony of ends. So this is, again, when I experienced friendship, just demonstrated platonic love, I suppose. In this case, that's what the yellow rose represents. I was having a good time. And then I decided to complicate it with romantic feelings. And he's having misgivings about this because, of course, his identity is illegal in this society. And so, of course, he is oppressed, and he doesn't understand why that's not allowed, but he also understands that it is kind of ripping him apart. If I'd confessed, what did I think I'd find? And now by flight I've cursed their home to drown. So he's like, what would have happened if I'd confessed? What would have happened if I'd given him that tulip that I had in my hand at the end of Sonnet 20? Like, what would have happened? I mean, it's illegal, so nothing would have come of it except maybe like being exiled. I mean, they're not going to put a prince to death, but they might exile him. And now by flight I curse their home to drown in seas of debt that they did not incur. So this is getting to that taxes not being redistributed again. They paid their tax each season to them, but had no priest or lord who could confer the distribution rightly owed them back. Again, same thing being reiterated here. It is a failure of the state. It is a failure of the system that they did not appropriately redistribute the wealth back to this village to help them during the winter for lives of loyal service to the land. My gifts were all that kept them from this track of wretched roads and open skies, whose hand was dealt the day my father stole their faith. So the prince understands that the priest also had a role here, but he's not blaming the priest, he's blaming himself up here, obviously, but then he's blaming the king for taking the priest away. And then, are we a prince and king, or more a wraith? And questioning, are we even really doing our job in this society? Which is a fair question to ask in this situation. Then sonnet 25? I think this is 25, right? Let's recount real quick. 21, 22, 23, 24. Yes, it is 25. The river trickled slow across the rocks, betraying nothing of the floods it dealt that locals knew to mark against their clocks. The miller and her son by chance now dwelt a bank apart from other refugees. So this is a river that they needed to cross to get to where they were going, because they are refugees now since they don't have their village. But they obviously didn't know that it has regular flooding. And these two just happened to be the last who were going to cross. And they were stopped by the flood. They couldn't get across. The local people know that it floods, but they didn't know they had to get across faster. So, yeah. So the flood had come before their chance to cross. The pair chose not to waste their time with pleas. Exposure's scythe would reap a heavy loss if all the rest delayed their chance to reach the sanctuary they'd lost homes to find. So they're being considerate of the others here. They're saying, hey, you guys go, find wherever you need to go. There's no reason to wait for us. We don't know how long it's going to take for this flood to subside. And exposure is a serious thing. Let's not get people killed. Bereft of choice, the pair trekked up the beach. No map or guide their journey would be blind. They let the rivers flow beside their path and prayed for welcome by a friendly hearth. Basically, what I'm saying here is they're following the course of the river. They're going to walk up the river because settlements need water, obviously. And so they're walking near the water and just using that as their path. Also means they're not going to end up walking in circles and getting lost person syndrome, which no one wants. Sonnet 26. We have no need of millers or their sons. The trade was filled in every town they found. So, yeah, no one needs a miller. So everywhere they're going, hey, do you need a miller? Is there somewhere we can settle? They're being told, no, sorry. They did their best to scrape together funds. They learned there was a market to expound complaints in written word to send to those with power to enact a remedy. So we're actually coming back to the fact that the miller's son is literate, because the prince had his valet teach the miller's son how to read and write. And that is now keeping the miller and her son alive. So when all that kept the pair alive was prose, their journey stretched before them endlessly. There was no town that needed words so much that coin would flow enough to make a home. Essentially meaning, once you've written something, it doesn't need to be written again. It only needs to be written once, and so there's not a sort of continuous need for more and more writing constantly. It is very much contract work in this particular setting, in this particular world. And contract work is not going to allow you to stay in one place in a early Renaissance setting. At least not written word contract work. You know what I mean. They kept the river close enough to touch. It set their path when they were forced to roam. So again, saying they just keep following this river. That's all they're doing. They're just following the river. They walked so long the boy was now a man, but soon they reached the place new lives began. So I think they were probably... Yes, words. I know words. I can say them. They come out of my mouth sometimes, just apparently not right now. Anyway, so they're still continually following the river. I intend the miller's son to be 16 or 17 when they abandoned the village, which means they've been walking for a year or two. So they've been on the road for a year or two now, which is a long time to be on the road for. Sonnet 27. The travellers heard the cart and horse behind, then on The travellers heard the cart and horse behind them on the road, so quickly stepped aside. So this is still the miller and her son. They heard a cart and horse behind them. They're like, we don't want to get run over. So they step off to the side of the road. Now there's a sight I don't routinely find. The merchant stopped and stepped up off his ride. Now I've used up instead of down here. The reason I've used up is just because stopped, stepped, up. I like the reiteration of the P sound. So sue me. I used technically the wrong direction, up instead of down, just because it sounds better, but you still understand what it means. I'd wager I've been told of you before, the miller and her son who wields a pen. The folk along the river all but swore their gods had sent you out as middlemen. Basically, the merchant's like, oh yeah, I've heard talk in town. You've been helping people out. But in your place I would have sought a mill, and by that look, I'd hazard that you are. So this guy, he figures out their situation pretty quickly, that they're looking for somewhere where they can actually settle down, but they haven't found a place yet. I know a town that has a mill to fill, so hop on up, I'll take you in my cart. The merchant's kindness found them just in time. They'd almost planned for lifelong pantomime. I know people are going to question my use of pantomime here, but sort of... So pan is sort of everything. Mime is repetition, so repeating the same thing forever, essentially, is what I'm saying with pantomime, rather than... Where is it? It's behind you! I'm not going for that kind of thing, but I mean... I guess they would find it morbidly amusing in some way, but I'm going for, like, repeating the same thing forever constantly when I'm using pantomime. That's the sense I'm using it in. That might not be completely correct, but I don't care. It's my poem. I do what I want. On to Sonnet 28. The town sat on and by a mammoth bridge that spanned the waters bordering two lands. We know where this town is. We know it. This is the same town that you were introduced to way back in the first cycle. And now they're finally getting here. The merchant left his cart up on the ridge. The road into the valley needed hands to build it new, since rains had ripped it down upon itself alongside valley slopes. So this is to point out that, hey, they don't actually have all that much money in this town. It is not a wealthy place at all, and they don't even have the money to fix this road that's been destroyed that largely prevents merchants from getting to them, which is not helpful. Also, I want to point out, sat on and by a mammoth bridge, yes, there are houses on the bridge. It's a very, very big bridge, and there are houses on it, and the town probably has maybe 600 to 800 people in it. That's what I think the population of the town probably is. As many as 2,000 at most. I would say 2,000 would be the highest number that it could possibly have. My estimate would be 600 to 800 people. Anyway, so this place is not protected by a crown, but walk for leagues you'll have no higher hopes. This is the merchant speaking, saying, I get it. This doesn't seem like a nice place, and it's not protected by any kings, really, but you're really not going to find a mill anywhere else. Not nearby, anyway. How could a town like this have no defense? We've seen no other bridge for several days. The millers, so basically, hey, this is the only place you can cross this river. Why would someone not be defending this? And then the miller's son soon understood the sense. This border town was forced to pay both ways. So we're getting this same thing that you saw in Cycle 1 once again, reiterating that yes, this border town gets taxed by two different kingdoms. An empty mill made all that worth their while. At last they had themselves a domicile. So yeah, sure, it sucks to get double taxed, but they actually have a place to live now. So that's worth it. Sonnet 29. The former miller left in quite the state. This is someone else speaking. This is basically just some person who's welcoming them to town. It's not that we cannot afford to live, it's more the stress of life that won't abate. The threat of war can be transformative in ways that press a toll upon the mind. So there was a miller here previously. That miller left because living in this place is stressful. Having the constant threat of war on your head is very, very stressful. So they left. The miller listened closer than her son, who puzzled over gearing unrefined. I'm shocked an ancient mill like this can run. The miller looked at what her son had found. You're right, this thing is almost an antique. So the technology here is regressive. It's quite old. They haven't had new technological advancements here. And you're about to learn the reason for that. Most merchants find a way to skip our town. They know their hopes to gain are fairly bleak. We rarely hear the ways our trades progress. I hope that will not make you reassess. And the reason why merchants don't come to this place is because they're double taxed. They don't have that much money. They have enough to get by, because they do have, there is some redistribution of wealth still in the winter and that, and of course there's strength in numbers, this being a town rather than a village, which means it's easier to survive. But they really don't have as much money as surrounding places, and so merchants are just sort of like, well, no, I'm not going to come here. And travelers and traveling merchants and that are really how word spreads in this world, and, you know, in the real world historically, of technological innovations. So they don't get to hear of the newest innovations and the newest ways of doing things because no one comes by who can tell them. So things get more and more outdated over time. And Sonnet 30. It's a bit of a time skip here. They've settled in now, just so that no one's confused here. What happens if you're hurt beside the road? I'll always be too young to lose my son. I'm sure you'll learn to love our new abode. Your plan would see our journeys end undone. This is the miller pleading with her son, hey, you don't need to leave. You don't need to go on a journey. You can stay here. We're good here. I disagree. This is my journey's end. My literacy is a skill this town can use. So, like, I can go out. I can actually go and find the innovations that they need to be more productive and sort of make more money for themselves. Essentially, instead of just relying on the potential of them getting better innovations, they are seizing the knowledge and means of production for themselves. We're doing a little socialism here. Let's not tell the king about that. They're probably not going to like the socialism. No longer will they have to know. No longer will they have to be content to wait until calamity ensues. There does not need to be calamity. I will not hide away in worlds gone by when I can foster brand new amity. So I will not hide away in worlds gone by, basically saying, I am not going to sit here and be content with the fact that everything is outdated, even though the world around us is progressing. When I can foster brand new amity, I can make friends in other towns. We can have good relationships with them. We can bring more merchants here if we just improve the situation that we're in. Basically, doing the job of a librarian is sort of doing information studies before information studies had a name. So yeah, no longer will they have to be content to wait until calamity ensues. There does not need to be calamity. Saying these people are basically just waiting for someone to use this town as an excuse for war to break out. Well, you know what? They should enjoy their lives instead, and I'm going to make sure that they can actually enjoy their lives. What he's saying, if nothing else, I beg you let me try. Basically saying, please let me try this. Just trust me. As your son, trust me to do this. The miller loathed to let him leave alone, but chose to trust he'd make the world his own. So she really doesn't want to let him go on this journey, but it's like, you know what? I have to trust him. He's an adult now. He has to be able to make his own decisions. I messed about with this line a lot to actually get it right. I'm not going to go through all the crossings out. This was basically just me figuring out the rhyme. It ended up being alone, own. I just struggled with that rhyme. That's why there's lots of crossings out. It wasn't me changing my mind on things, really. And yeah, that's Sonnet 30. I did that much faster than last time. I didn't go on any big tangents about the things that I didn't go on any big tangents. Good job, me. Hopefully, all the future explications can be this short as well. Subscribe if you want to see more. There's like no one watching this. 3 people watched the previous one. No one's going to know this. But hey, if you're a new person and you do watch it, subscribe if you want to hear more. And good job reaching this far in the video. Yeah, that's about it. I'll see you in the next one, 3 people who are watching this.